Alan Holden here with a walking tour of one of the sixth largest employers in Long Beach. This facility is about 100 years old and it has hosted Hollywood icons like Bob Hope, Bing Crosby, and Esther Williams. The sprawling campus sees thousands of people from Los Angeles all the way through deepest Orange counties. Local Long Beachies might pass right by without giving it a second thought, unless you were a veteran. Surprised? Yes, it's the Long Beach Veterans Administration. Once a naval hospital, this place has a rich history as a Long Beach citizen, providing care and rehab behind some very new and classic Art Deco walls. But those older walls will be coming down soon to make way for more and modern facilities. So I thought it was worth a few minutes for the local Long Beach Diary to stop by and learn more about the place. As it happened, the head of public affairs, Richard Beam, also thought it was a cool idea and shared more time than he really had to sit, chat, and also give us a whirlwind tour of the old and new places.
Alan, you ready?
Yes.
Come on into my humble abode or office.
Okay, we'll go there instead. By my own research, what we now refer to as the Department of Veterans Affairs was originally started in 1865. It's something Lincoln approved as it's the original Veterans Asylum, slowly transferred through various acts of Congress and presidential initiatives into what we know it as today. 1921, the Veterans Bureau after World War I. Hoover started the Veterans Administration, I think it was, in 1930, and then we go all the way to Reagan before it became Department of Veterans Affairs. That's great history, but let's talk about this place here.
So the origins of the property was a Navy hospital. From what we could gather, there were either 2 or 3 hospitals that were run by the Navy in Long Beach.
One was big Navy shipyard.
Absolutely. So we had the property here. There were some smaller buildings just down 7th Street where I believe Cal State Long Beach has some housing now. There was some small presence at that time. So about 1950 is roughly when the Department of Navy at that time turned over the property to what was the Veterans Administration. I think it was 50-51. In fact, we still have some buildings that are back in that time frame. And there's a couple of buildings, the structures are there but no longer used because they're inhabitable. And then we have some structures. If you took away the 11-story tower that we're in right now, you would see the origins of what the hospital looked like. And it's a U-shaped brick building that's kind of an Art Deco building that still exists.
Their bones are still in here?
We still use it, yeah. So the tower that we're in was brought into existence in about 1970, and it's on rollers. This is the safest building to be in during an earthquake because of the rollers that we have underneath it. So that's kind of the origins of how it transitioned from a Navy hospital to VA hospital. We now have a historian for National VA, but most hospitals were too busy just doing their daily duties to keep up with their histories.
Well, I imagine it's not part of their mission statement.
It's not.
It's like your mission statement is to serve America's veterans.
Yeah.
Nowhere down after a comma does it say, oh, no, by the way, maintain history about your buildings.
Although, I would tell you, in some ways, we wish that we knew more about the origins because it's kind of a touch point to know what was it like back then. And so even for us, when we went through some of our old buildings, we found old posters that would show Bob Hope visiting this hospital.
Wow.
The Bob Hope Show, transcribed direct from the Veterans Administration Hospital at Long Beach, California, with Les Brown and his band of renown, a special guest, Bing Crosby. And here he is, Bob Hope.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Here I am in Long Beach on Christmas Day for these boys in the Veterans Hospital. As I look out amongst you, I can see the Christmas spirit everywhere. Red robes and green faces. I thought this was a hospital, but I never saw such a healthy bunch of guys. In this place, you're not considered ambulatory till you pass the nurse you're chasing.
We've had Playboy bunnies from back in that day and age come to visit patients. So there's history.
Back when it was cool.
Back when it was okay, and it was cool to do. It was kind of interesting to go through those pictures and to see, quite honestly, some of Hollywood's talent would spend time here doing things for the residents of the hospital, whether they were Navy or veteran.
You guys are talking about posters you found in broom closets and stuff, or basically?
In an old projection room. The outside, if you look at the building, you can tell the era is different, and we can certainly go walk in them, but from the interior, you may not necessarily know that you're in a building that was here in 1950. So we'll go outside real quick, and I'm going to show you the exterior, and then we'll head inside. It's the funny thing about the government is we don't throw anything away. So old buildings or whatever, we, to the extent possible, we're repurposing and use them and use them.
Elevator is going down.
But the amazing thing is when you look at construction back then, they built things to last.
Not a lot of prefab.
No, I remember when I first was here, we had a building that was, I think it was 122,000 square foot. The OR walls were marble slabs. That's what construction was at the time. And you don't build any, I mean, we don't build anything now with marble, and it was just amazing to see. Going one?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the amazing thing. It was crazy to see all this old construction. Of course, we ended up taking all those buildings down. They weren't seismically safe. And you gotta look at the useful life too, though. So it was 122,000 square foot, and actually we don't know when they were constructed because had been in use by us since the 1950s until probably 2003 or 4. I mean, we were using them up until that point.
Well, they probably built them shortly after the naval yard, I would imagine.
Not that I'm an expert on it, but I'd say around 1920s is when we think they were built. Let's head out this way real quick. So this is going to change. These are just temporary corridors. It's going to be a 2-story lobby. So when you walk in, it's going to be giant. As it stands right now, we've got 3 or 4 different places where people come in from, and nobody knows necessarily what's the main entrance.
Doesn't look grand enough.
No. And I'll show you Building 1. If you look at our original pictures from 1950, it's a U-shaped building that has a slight Art Deco look to it. This is where it comes out. So if you think again in a U shape, you got this side, then it goes across, it comes out front. That was the original main entrance to the hospital. From 7th Street, you'd come in, it would look like traditional long driveway, a circular drive, and a U-shaped building. And this over here is probably 2000.
I was living here when they built that.
And that's kind of the nature of things. You walk through our hallways, if you remember before the current construction, nothing was necessarily straight. Because what you're doing is you're trying to match up new construction with old construction.
Do you think it was planned that way, or do you think that's just how they eyeballed right angles back then?
You know, I wish I knew. I don't really know. And sometimes I joke that it really had nothing to do with planning, because if it did, it wouldn't be so screwy. You might start today with an idea that we need X building. Between today, when I recognize the need, and when I do the ribbon cutting and actually go into the building, it can be 7 to 10 years. And anything could happen nationally or locally to change what I said today. In my mind, sometimes it's amazing that we actually get something
done.
From concept to conclusion done. Yeah, we'll make a right, and we'll go down just a hair.
All right. Okay, have a good day. No problem.
I read something on the VA site. 60% of medical professionals receive their training working in the VA environment.
About 7 in 10 United States physicians have had a portion of their training provided at a VA somewhere in the country. When we look at the mission of VA on the healthcare side, there are really 3 aspects to what we do: healthcare, education, and benefits. If VA didn't exist and you took out the 120 some hospitals that exist within VA
and their specialties,
there would not be enough open capability on the outside market to train those physicians that graduate every single year. We play a huge role in training clinicians that ultimately may not stay with VA, but they treat civilians across the entire country. So 7 out of 10 have some training that is provided in part by the VA.
what do you think is the most misunderstood thing out there about VA, perhaps in general, or this location?
If I thought about the 13 years that I've spent in this role, Long Beach has been, whether it is lucky, exceptional, blessed, hardworking people, I mean, all those answers apply. Whether it is VA or any federal agency, anybody that does the job that I do, I think that there are two options with every issue that comes before me. Some stakeholder has a question about something that occurs here at the hospital. It could be congressional, could be stakeholders in the public, could be veterans, could be the press. Every time I have an issue that is brought forward to me where, as a public affairs officer, I have to address it, I really have two options. Those two options are to clarify why the person who's bringing me the issue may not understand all of the circumstances surrounding the issue, or the second option I have is to say the questions or issues are meritorious, they're truthful, and we screwed up, and here's what we're going to do to fix it. Those are my only two options with any issue that comes up.
Far be it from any reputable member of the media to latch onto a story with a controversial angle. As you know, controversy tends to breed more attention.
Right.
And I guess it's up to you to kind of say, well, here's why your attempt to find the controversy here doesn't work.
Right. I mean, it doesn't always go the way I'd like. Given that healthcare is complex, the rules of quote-unquote our engagement with our patients are complex. One size doesn't fit all, so there is no simple answer really. And the hard part for me, I think, or the frustration is certainly we do have some folks that want to look for the more sensational. And when you're trying to write a story that may be 700 to 2,500 words, is that enough words to really describe the complexity of healthcare, a veteran, congressional laws, policies? And many times it's not. But all I ever ask is that we get the opportunity to explain our side of the situation within the guidelines that the law gives me, because clearly I can't share a patient's record or...
You don't have to violate HIPAA regulations.
Right. I have patient privacy and I have HIPAA to abide by.
Well, and I think the public in general could benefit from listening to long format interviews instead of the short stuff.
I would have to say I agree. Life is complicated and it's not something you can explain in 300 words or less sometimes. So now we transition to sometime before 1950, because you've got now here the original construction goes back and over, and the buildings over there were original to the construction too.
Yeah.
Part of the original design.
It's really nicely appointed.
I tell you what I've loved about this hospital in particular is we have really tried to not only do the construction, but it doesn't look like
A 1950s construction.
Right, and we don't want our veterans to think, oh, this is how our country thinks. We get this old crappy building.
Barbershop?
Oh yeah, barbershop here that's open every day. Obviously we have a canteen, a retail shopping area that you can buy TVs and blenders and shoes, and very similar to a PX at an actual military base. Oh yeah, we're gonna have a chapel. We provide services in a number of different beliefs.
It's just such a rapid change through a doorway.
Yeah.
You know, from a linoleum sterile hospital aisle to the sanctity of a chapel.
The funny thing is when you think about healthcare and how much has changed between, let's say, the 1950s and today. So in the old days, even simple procedures way back when, if you had them done, you were inpatient in the hospital. And now the way medicine treats patients is we don't really want you in the hospital any more than you absolutely need to be.
Right.
Obviously, patients recuperate better at home than they do in a hospital. You want to keep your beds for critical patients. And there are a lot of infections that can pass specifically inside the hospital. So
that's where sick people go, for God's sake.
Absolutely, right? But the funny thing is how different healthcare is now. Back in the old days, we had a theater here called the Pantages Theater, which we still use today. They used to run first-run movies in our auditorium. It's amazing to think that was a part of a hospital.
It was the rehabilitative effort, I think, to keep them entertained or perhaps to lift their spirits.
Probably all of the above. This is the Pantages Theater, which we'll walk into. The projection booth was up here. The screen and the stage were down here, and we used to have patients that would be wheeled in to watch a show, first-run movie. Back in the old days, over in our spinal cord injury in the basement, there actually used to be a bowling alley. Look how much has changed. I mean, if you think about that now, if you're well enough to bowl, you shouldn't
what are
need
you
to be
doing
in
here?
the hospital. Right. Old hospitals, old healthcare, especially the military, recreation was kind of critical to the
This is a cool place. This space out here.
Actually, we just had a 4th of July event with about 3,000 visitors. So we use this as often as possible for events.
Well, we are certainly backstage, so to speak.
We're going to sneak in.
We've climbed some stairs. The crowd has diminished. There's nobody here. What are you trying to do here?
Trying to break in. Let me sneak see if it may be open from that side here. See if one of those will peel apart.
But the hinge is on that side.
There we go. All right, come on in. Let me turn on some lights.
Oh, wow. Look at the parquet floor.
So you can see the projection booth was in back, stage down here. They'd fill it with as many veterans as they could. So you're in a room that included stars back in that era. They were the A-list. I find that just incredible to think that Bob Hope was in the same room we're standing in right now.
Right.
Doing shows for patients.
And now we continue with our show from the auditorium of the Long Beach Veterans Hospital. Hey, isn't this a wonderful place, Bob?
Oh, it sure is, Bill. And as Esther Williams just found out, these guys have really got the Christmas spirit.
Why? What happened?
Esther stood under the mistletoe and 200 bed patients became ambulatory.
I've been having a wonderful time talking to these fellas, Bob. I never realized this was such a big place.
Well, it's spread out so much you have to get well before you can come here.
And unfortunately, this building is scheduled to come down. Same issue. It's not seismically updated. If the walls could talk, it'd probably be amazing.
Well, it will live on as long as YouTube's around anyway.
There you go.
Lloyd Pantages. It's got to be more than a coincidence. I mean, it's a theater.
Yeah.
For one, it's the same name. For two,
It's one of those things where I wish we had the history.
At Hollywood's Pantages Theater, it's the motion picture industry's night of nights. And the film capital's top stars turn out for the annual presentation of the coveted Oscars.
how long did it take you to orient yourself to this
I
place?
still get lost every day. I mean, to his point, what's this construction going to be? I mean, from one day to the next, I don't know what hallway's going to shift or change because of construction or something that's going on. But you know the look when you see a patient that comes and they're just lost. You just know that look. Mm-hmm. And I tell them I've been here 13 years and I still get lost because we're about 150 square acres, roughly. It's an amazing little city.
Yeah, okay.
All right. If you're good, I'm good.
Okay.
Let me know if you need anything. We're here.
Thanks. And just like that, it's time for him to get back to official business. You can hear those historic broadcasts at oldradioprograms.us. Many thanks to Richard Beam and the staff at the Long Beach VA for their help. And, of course, a big thank you to the veterans, too. For KLBP, Low Power FM, the Long Beach Radio Project, I'm Alan Holden.